Hi everyone, Mrs. Leaf here. Today we're going to talk about the treble clef, the music staff, and the spaces that make up the music staff in the treble clef. So let's get started by talking about our music staff. So here I have a really big version of the music staff. And let's talk about some of the things that are on the music staff. If we look here, you can see that there are some white spaces and that there are black lines. On our music staff, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black lines. Those are the lines on the music staff. Let's talk about another thing on the music staff that you might see. We're going to talk about the treble clef. So the treble clef is what instruments like the flute, clarinet, and trumpet play in. It's for instruments that play higher notes. And the treble clef just sits on our music staff. If we are in the treble clef, we have a certain set of notes that we use. So I want to talk about just the notes that are in the spaces of the treble clef. So we talked about those lines, how there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, but there's also spaces. The spaces are in between the lines. So if I start at the very bottom, my first space is the letter F in music, and this is in the treble clef. If I go up one more, my second space is A. If I go to my third space, that musical note is C in the treble clef. And if I go up to the fourth space, that musical note is E. We always want to make sure that we go from bottom to top. So I'll go ahead and I'll number these to make it a little bit easier. So if we look at this, the first space is F, the second space is A, the third space is C, and the fourth space is E. Now, you might notice something. If we start at the bottom and we read up, it actually spells a word. That word is face. And an easy way to remember that those notes are F, A, C, E, or face is your face fits in this space. If you use your two arms, you can pretend that they're lines. Your face fits in the space. We have all of the letters in the spaces in the treble clef, face fitting in the space. Another way to remember the spaces in the treble clef is to use something called an acrostic. An acrostic is a type of poem that each word starts with a letter. So, for example, my F would be Fernando. So if I made an acrostic to go along with my treble clef spaces, I could make an acrostic like this. So my first line is an F, so we have to come up with a word that starts with the letter F. So my first word will be Fernando. Now, for my second space, I need to come up with a word that starts with the letter A. So my word for our second space is going to be always. Okay. Now, our third space is C. I need a word that starts with the letter C. So for my C word, I'm going to put cooks. And for my fourth space, I need a word that starts with the letter E. So for my letter E space, I will put eggs. So the acrostic that I just wrote to remember the spaces in the treble clef is Fernando always cooks eggs. Is there an acrostic that you can come up with so you can remember the spaces in the treble clef? Try it on your own. So now that you know the letters that go along with the spaces of the treble clef, let's talk a little bit about what happens if you add some notes in. So for my example, you can see that I have 4 quarter notes. my 4 quarter notes are all in the F space, that first space in the treble clef. So I have 4 F quarter notes. F, 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 F. Now, let's see what happens if I change one of those quarter notes. I'm going to move it to a different space. All right, I've moved one of my quarter notes to the second space. So if we're looking at the second space, what note will that be? If you said A, you are correct. That second quarter note is in the A space. Now, I'm going to change my third quarter note, which was originally an F, to another different note. So I'm going to draw it in the third space. If I'm drawing a note in the third space, what do you think that note will be? Remember, the first space was F, the second space was A. Do you remember what comes in the third space? If we look on here, we can see that the third space is C, and that quarter note goes through the C space. Okay. Our fourth quarter note is still on the F space. I want to change it to the E space though, so I'm going to erase it. And think about it. What space do you think I need to move that quarter note to make it an E? If you said the fourth space, you are correct. And I'll show you what that will look like. So now we have a quarter note that's in the E space. So remember, our first space is F, second space is A, third space is C, fourth space is E. I hope this helps you with remembering the spaces in the treble clef. Happy practicing. Bye-bye.